And welcome to the Savage Nation. I'm the Nation. I'm Michael. It's a Saturday evening, early evening, late afternoon on the West Coast, and it's summertime. It's still summertime, as you well know, but you can feel the autumn in the air in some places. The leaves are beginning to fall, and it's the passage of time that leads me to want to discuss stream of consciousness from Isaiah to Michael Savage. Now, hold on. I understand that there have been people along the way between Isaiah and myself who have used the technique of stream of consciousness. And I can throw out some names for you to digest if you study literature, or I know that it's like a foreign word to most people who are into politics. But to me, the hysterical realism of political commentary leads me to want to talk about literature today on this little broadcast. No, I know I've done politics and I still do politics all the time, but the hysterical realism, as I said before, is so overwhelmingly suffocating that I have to turn to literature or film or music to survive the utter boredom of listening to people talk about politics. Because no matter what I have done, and I've written 29 or 30 books, and I've shaped things to a certain extent. I was very instrumental in Donald Trump's rise to power, and I'm proud of that. And his entire platform of Borders, Language, and Culture has been turned into the MAGA movement, which is just great. But I really didn't create the concept of nationalism. I just captured the imagination of the public by summarizing the whole concept of nationalism in three words: Borders, Language, and Culture. But again, I don't want to bore you with the hysterical realism of politics any more than I'm bored by it myself. So, what is stream of consciousness and why am I doing this? It's a literary exercise, it's for fun, it's to relax. Are we live on X and on Facebook and on YouTube? I didn't even check. I surely hope so, because otherwise I'm talking to myself, which is in a way all we do anyway. When you actually think about it, if you're in the media, you're only talking to yourself because you're in front of a camera and no one's listening. You don't really know who's listening. I'm going to have to go on X as an exercise in, stream of consciousness. I hit it right. I've got a big 241 people listening, which is fine. I don't mind that. There's nothing wrong with 241 people or 2,000 people or 25,000 people or 200,000 people or 2 million people. What's the difference? I hear God talking to me all the time when I'm about to do something lately. I'm about to take a step. I feel God saying to me, well, God or conscience, whatever you want to call it, a voice, a still small voice, however it's put. And the voice says, is this really important? And the answer is, of course, no, none of it's really important. Nothing is really important when you break it down. At the end of the day, it's all about survival. It's all about survival on one level or another. And so when I talk about stream of consciousness from Isaiah to Michael Savage, being somewhat playful with the idea, I'm really not being playful. I mean, I know that if you read Isaiah in the Bible, which I've done, here we have the old Bible, which I've shown you before, it's stream of consciousness. Isaiah is just rambling on. Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and to the writers that write iniquity, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right of the poor of my people, that widows may be their spoil, and that they may make the fatherless their prey. It's nice poetry. It's got iambic pentameter. And then he rambles on from one thought to another, which is what I brought to radio in 1994. No one had ever heard it before. Now, there were people in radio before me who were good as talkers, but they were one or two dimensional. And since I left radio, no one's been able to achieve what I achieved in stream of consciousness for two reasons. One, it's on the one hand, the easiest thing to do if you have a huge and vast background in reading and in many subjects of experience. It's impossible to do if you are simply a monodimensional, one trick pony, one string banjo, Republicans good Democrats bad, or Democrats great, Republicans evil. If that's what you do, you can have an audience that will listen to you until the last breath comes out of your mouth, but it's so boring it's hard to listen to. And so I try to listen to as little of it as possible. And I'm going to go back in a minute to the stream of consciousness idea, which I love doing. And I don't know what's triggering this other than it's summertime and I'm reading literature again. I was bored the other day. I went into a bookstore. I couldn't find anything of any interest, whatever. It was all either complaints by ethnic minorities. All the books in Barnes and Noble were ethnic minorities complaining about whitey, or women complaining about heterosexuals. There were hardly any books written by men. So I had to go back to an older book from when I was in college, and he was like a god. I mean, the guy won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and it was a slim volume. I didn't want to read Moby Dick. I was not ready to read 500 pages. I knew I would never finish it. I'd buy one of those 500-page books. It would sit in my shelf. I'd never open it. So I bought The Fall by Albert Camus, and I wanted to see if it still had the word panache, power of movement that it had when I was young and 20. When I was influenced by novels to a great extent. And this book, The Fall, it's about a modern man in the face of evil. And he gives a confessional in a seedy bar in Amsterdam about his former life as a lawyer, where he tries to present himself in the most positive manner, showing what a good guy he was. He walked blind people across the street. But at the end of the day, he's riddled with insecurities. He's riddled with the thought that he's really a piece of crap. No matter what good he's done, he doesn't feel good about himself. And that's why the book won a Nobel Prize, because although he's looking back upon his life as a respected lawyer in Paris, a champion of noble causes, but in his as a libertine chasing women, simply looking for a good time. And he doesn't want to be judged. But as he talks of himself, he realizes all the ambiguities of modern life and the hidden treachery in everything he does and everything he says, and the irony of his life, and this recital of his great life in the past, in light of the fact that he's filled with insecurities, is why the book is still worth reading. And I've been reading it. I can't say I read the whole thing, but I've read enough to have been triggered to come before you today with this small short story of a broadcast called The Stream of Consciousness, from Isaiah to Michael Savage. So as I said, when I was in the radio business, there were others in the business who were one-string ponies who had large audiences. And every day it was the same exact thing as today: hysterics, hitting you over the head with the greatness of themselves and the greatness of Trump, or the greatness of communism and the horrors of Trump, whatever it may be. And the reason I enjoyed radio and enjoyed it is because I could bring jazz music, for example. If I would bring Coltrane to a show, it would trigger me and my mind about John Coltrane's jazz would trigger me. The disambiguation in my mind would trigger things that had occurred in my life as I first heard Coltrane as a middle-class boy in Queens and was so-called blown away by the horn, so to speak. So then there's Marcel Proust, James Joyce, Ulysses, and we all know about soliloquies and train of thought and stream of consciousness and psychoanalysis, and how Freud copied it from someone else and brought it into psychoanalysis and taught us to talk about what's on our mind, freed of rational thought, and let it all hang out, man, from the inner depths, didn't we? Free dream associations, for example, are still used in tribal settings. And contemporary political screeds are the opposite of this. They are simply didactic, one rail, small rail articles of thought. I remember years ago, I won't say who, but a young lady was brought into the family for a brief period of time by a young man in the family. And she was the first person who was brought into the family who was at all interested in literature. And we all went on some vacation somewhere. I don't remember where. She was a nice person. And she was reading a book called Tristram Shandy by Lawrence Stern. and it was written in 1757 by Lawrence Sterne. I thought he was a Jewish writer from New York in the 50s, but it turns out he was an Irish Catholic writer in the 1700s. And he was famous for this series of novels called Tristram Shandy, which was basically train of thought of this man going. You have to read it if you understand where I'm coming from. It was so entertaining. The man could write from 1 minute to the next about what was going on in his life, whether it be about a nose or a pair of shoes or the taste of water or a pint of beer. It was fabulous to understand that this whole literary technique, stream of consciousness, ran through so many things, going back to Isaiah, as I have tried to say, all the way up to Michael Savage in the media, which I am doing for you now. Now I am doing this for you. Now, I would say this was triggered as well by the fact that I must admit, I got cheap about 2 years ago and canceled my Apple uh, app on my phone where I used to get music. I got mad at Apple for some reason. I didn't want to spend $10 a month on free music. Now, I love music, and music got me through so many bad phases of my life. And so when I had Apple Music, it was after my heart attack had occurred. I started listening to a lot of music again to get away from fear. And I would go back to my 50s stuff, old rock and roll that I used to play on the radio, jazz that I grew up with, Latin music, mainly Cuban music, but also Panamanian and Puerto Rican music, incredible rhythms and melodies that could lift you right up off the floor of depression and take you to the heights of freedom. Music is one of the greatest formats of mankind. And so, as I say, 2 years ago, I got mad at Apple and canceled my subscription. And so for 2 years, I've more or less been without music. I don't know why. I didn't know what came over me. But this summer, I got bored and I fell into a sort of trough of, in the last few weeks, I don't know whether it's depression, ennui, boredom. I don't know what it did. I just was completely flatlined and out of energy for the last couple of weeks. Now, I tried vitamin therapy, which I am a specialist in. Uh, didn't really work. I mean, truthfully, I must tell you, the vitamin C and the zinc didn't really lift me up very much. I don't think so, but I actually don't know what lifted me out of this spate of sadness, depression, flatness of thought, unable to go on, moving one foot in front of the other, become heavy shoes of lead that he could not lift. So I'm out of it. I don't know how. Maybe it was the Apple Music. I subscribed the other day, you see, and started listening to my old favorites again. And the old favorites, whether it be music, and some of them are really great. I mean, what was it? I can't even remember the name of some of the tunes. If I clicked on my Apple Music and played some Cuban music, I got the melodies that I love, whether they be Johnny Pacheco or, I mean, I can sing the songs for you now and dance, but I really don't want to be a song and dance man at this stage of my life. I also found that music can be very depressing if you play. I learned this years ago when I was a depressive kid, young man, never to listen to piano sonatas. I don't know where I read this, but it turned out to be 100% true. If you're sad and depressed, absolutely avoid piano sonatas. It'll cast you into a suicidal state of mind that you may not be able to come out of. Music can change your moods pretty quickly, as you well know. Now, I don't listen to rap music. I find it to be so limited in rhythm and in content that it's of no interest to me whatsoever. It just doesn't enter my brain. To me, it's just noise to be avoided, like graffiti on a wall or watching a bum puke in the street. That's what rap music is to me. So I tend not to want to see a bum puking in the street any more than I want to walk in the streets of San Francisco without a pair of galoshes. And I wanted to then just tell you, because it's now approaching a point in the evening where I will soon leave you to go to dinner in some seedy Chinese restaurant, because I'm in the mood to have seedy, kind of ungreasy Chinese food in a greasy Chinese restaurant where I tell them not to put grease in the food, low salt, no oil, and no sugar. Although I choose restaurants in the Chinese variety that only use salt, sugar, and oil. But I know the owner so long that even he listens to me by now. I guess he cooks the food for me the way I like it in my stream of consciousness eating form, which is to eat the way I like and like the way I eat. and demand that I what I want or I won't eat it at all, and I'll send it back. So there I'm telling you, my friends, what I'm doing today, which is about to go to dinner and have low salt, no sugar, low oil Chinese food with perhaps one light beer. And that, my friends, is the conclusion of my broadcast today on Stream of Consciousness from Isaiah to Michael Savage. Now, you have to understand that there are people who are listening to me who don't understand a word I'm saying. They have such small, limited minds, they can't even follow what I am saying. I pay no attention to them. I have an assistant who will go through the louts who listen and delete them forever from the stream of this program, restream. They'll never be heard from again. They'll go back to their miserable, horrible lives hating Donald Trump or something that gets them through the day. I don't understand that part of it. They're all over the country now on bridges with horns, whistles, and balloons. Trump is a fascist for wanting to clean up crime. Well, you had 30 years to clean up the crime in your fucking cities, and they've turned into shitholes. So he brought in the National Guard, and all of the gangsters in the political world, no matter how clean they may look, they're represented. Haven't you seen enough gangster movies to understand when they say we own the judges and we own the politicians, that there are judges and politicians who are owned by the gangs that run the cities? You can't put two and two together, that real life 101, that these guys who say Trump is a fascist are actually losing money because he brought in the National Guard and it's bad for their business of dealing with drugs, crime, prostitution, or whatever it is. Don't you get it? It's just cutting into their income, which is why they're calling him a fascist, which is why we have all wanted a benevolent dictator for a very long time in America. And I say he has finally come along. And I say all the more power to him. In fact, I would like more benevolence. And well, do I want more benevolence and less dictatorship from Trump? Or do I want more dictatorship and less benevolence from Trump to clean up this country and turn it back into America, the America I loved and still believe in? I'll let you think about it. I think we need more dictatorship and less benevolence from Donald Trump. So I say, Donald, you can keep smiling, but bring out the National Guard, bring out the Marines, get rid of the scumbags in the city, and throw the politicians in jail with them for all I give a shit. How's that? Now, if I've offended you with my vulgarity, I hope so, because you need it, because you're not used to it. And by the way, I've noticed that even Charles Schumer has started to throw a few fucks into his conversation to make him sound a little street tough. I guess he's afraid of the scumbag Islamist Muslim Brotherhood piece of shit deported who's biting at his heels, along called Occasional Cortex, who came first, all bastard children of the Jewish evil one, who is Bernie Sanders, the most evil Jew since Karl Marx, to have come upon the scene, because there's not a shred of Jewishness in Bernie Sanders other than the Karl Marx in his, and the tuna fish stain on his lapel from the sandwich he never ate. That, my friends, is my diatribe or screed of the day, my free dream of association, my soliloquy, my free dream association, as I say, my train of thought for the day. I am not Proust. I am not Joyce. I'm not Lawrence Stern, but I am Michael Savage. And I hope I have given you something to think about. Maybe if you take something home from this today, it'll be one thought. And that thought will be, yes, Trump seems to be becoming a benevolent dictator. And I love it, because that is what we have needed to clean up our cities and our streets of the filth and the crime, because the people who run the cities are in fact in bed with the criminals and the bums, because they make billions of dollars flowing through so many hands you can't imagine. You think those homeless people don't make a fortune for those who run these rotten, stinking sanctuary cities? There's billions of dollars in the homeless game, my friends, just as there were billions of dollars in the illegal immigrant game, my friend. And so, Mr. Trump, as I say to you, I know you have more important things to do than worry about what Michael Savage is saying about you. But yes, I admire your benevolence and your dictatorship. And I recommend that, now that I think about it, yeah, we want more dictatorship and less benevolence. And that's all I have to say today, because the time is getting close to when I have to get ready to go to my greasy, non-salty, non-sugary Chinese dinner with a beer tonight on this little program to entertain you on a warm summer's eve. And I hope to do more of these in the future just for my own entertainment because I'm feeling good again. I'm Michael Savage saying bye bye and so long for now. And if you like what you see and you see what you like and you want to know what I'm going to do them and not miss a word of it, you have to subscribe in order to get a notification on X. Otherwise, because I don't know when I'm going to do these things. If I don't want to do it, I don't do it. I don't work for a living anymore. I work because I enjoy it. And when I don't enjoy it, I don't do it. And the day I don't enjoy it at all, which almost happened this week, I was ready to say no more, goodbye. I'll just disappear like so many people have in the media. There's people I can mention that you used to know that were in your face every day. You don't see them anymore. Where are they? Some of the most famous actors on earth, they're still alive. You don't hear from them anymore. You don't hear from them at all. I wonder about that. But I don't know where I'm going to go with my creativity in the near future. So I did a little bit part in a movie last week, as I told you about it. I don't want to bore you with the story again about flying down to L.A. and appearing in a scene next to the great Jon Voight, which was the hardest thing I've done in my adult life. I couldn't remember the lines. I mean, I had it in front of me for weeks, and I read it at night. I read it before going to bed. I read this one page of manuscript in the toilet. I read it while cooking. I read it on the airplane. I read it before going to sleep. I read it that morning. I read it in the car being driven to the scene. I couldn't remember it. I blew the lines. How are they biting this morning, Ezra, says John. All I had to say was this. I added one line. I had to add my New York side. This wasn't in. I said, biting. I added my look. Biting. The director said it was fabulous. Wait till you see the movie. Because the script said, I'm afraid the bugs are biting more than the fish. But I didn't just say that. I said, biting? I'm afraid the bugs are biting more than the fish. I'd add my little shtick. But then I say, and here's a critical line, but you never know. Yeshua Hashem Keheref Ayin. Do you know what that means? Says Ezra the fisherman to John the fisherman. And he says, what? I'm going to catch a big one tonight. Ezra smiles, and then he says, no, it means that God's salvation can come in the blink of an eye. Your fate can change in the blink of an eye. God can change one's luck in an instant. It's good to have hope. So then the script goes on from there, and it was hard for me to remember it. I don't know why I had such trouble remembering it. But, you know, I had a taxi driver, was it an Uber driver the other day? I don't know how it came up. He was from the heart of Africa. He was a real African, just as like an Israeli Jew is a real Jew, as opposed to a Charles Schumer, who's an American type of whiny weakling Jew, the Israeli paratrooper, for example. So he was an African with culture. I could feel it on his. He was just an Uber driver. And we got to talk. I don't know where he was taking me. I don't remember. But we got to talk because I spent so many years in the islands of Fiji. I'm not unable to talk to people from different cultures if they speak English, even in a small manner. And one word led to the other, and he took out pictures of houses he was building. I forget where he was from Africa. I should remember which country he was in. It wasn't Nigeria. He was a big, broad guy, not a slender, tall guy. And you say, well, what does that have to do with anything? It has a lot to do with everything. But and anyway, he's building these houses in Africa, saving every penny while working around the clock. This is the kind of immigrant that we love. It doesn't matter to me what their color is. It doesn't matter to me what their race is. What matters is what they're doing. If they're working, then I respect them because I grew up poor as an immigrant, and I love people who work. I don't like welfare recipients. I think they should all be taken off welfare and put on to breaking rocks if necessary, certainly cleaning the streets with brooms and hoses, and of course, working with the poor if need be. But the point of the story is that this man and I got to talk on this 20-minute ride, and in addition to showing you what he was doing in Africa, I shared with him that I had just come back from, well, actually didn't tell him it was a movie script. I said to him, well, good luck, my friend. I said, I am Jewish. And as a Jewish statement, I knew as an African, he would appreciate a statement from another person who was honest with him about his people and his being and his belief system. And I said, we have a saying, I said to the driver, Yeshuas. It could be Yeshua in Israel, which is the Sephardic method of saying the Hebrew. It's Yeshuas. I said Yeshuas. They say Yeshua. Some say tomatoes or the tomatoes. But in Israel, they say Yeshua Hashem Karef Ayin. And that means God can change your fate in the blink of an eye. Now, I said that to the Uber driver. God can change your fate in the blink of an eye. He turned around in that Uber car and he got it. And he said, I know what you mean, sir. I know what you mean. And I said, that's why, sir, it's good to have faith and to believe in God, because God can change your luck in the blink of an eye. As you know, the blink of an eye. Watch out when you go through that intersection. Be careful when you step off that curb. Think twice before you had that fifth drink. Be very careful what you say to the stranger, because God can change your fate in the blink of an eye. Never forget that. And I think I remember the line now. Yeshua Hashem Karef Ayin. Good night, and be careful.